Okay, good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's well. Everyone looks very excited to be here, which is always good news. So yeah, my name is Neil Thacker. As you can tell straight away, I have hacker in my surname. So it's almost like my calling, my profession, my family trait was to go out and hack things. I've been a professional security tester for about 20 years. The last 5 years, I've really focused on more the corporate side of security. So hopefully I can give, again, a balanced view of kind of what security means today. My talk today is talking about pwning your data before your adversary. Okay? So something was mentioned in the discussion there is that people are after your company. They're after your organization. But what exactly are they after? Most of the attacks we see today, the target is the data that your company creates or processes or collects. We've heard a lot around, again, some of the surveillance. And what does surveillance actually mean? Surveillance is around, again, monitoring data, collecting data, finding out about individuals, and learning from that. So my call to action, if I don't cover it in the next 20 minutes, is to go back to your organizations and start thinking about how you can own your data before your adversary. A quick introduction to me. I'm a member of WebSense's Office of the CSO. So what WebSense has done is they've gone out there, they've hired security professionals, CISOs that have spent at least 10 years in information security and brought them into the organization. And you can reach out to us if you have a specific request, if you need some help with your security program. Go to websense.com/CSO. And again, you can contact us, you can reach out to us. If you have any issue that relates to information security. If you have a bad rash or something like that, please don't email me. Okay, if it's an information security issue, feel free to email us. We're asked to get involved in the community. So I'm a member of ENISA. So obviously in Latvia, there's a representative for ENISA. You have the European Union agency, a fully independent agency that can help you understand threat landscape. And there's a great report that I contributed towards that covers the threat landscape. So if you haven't read that already, I strongly recommend, if you have the opportunity of downloading that free report, learning a little bit more about what the threat landscape looks like. I also co-founded the Security Advisor Alliance, and this is specifically for security managers, security officers, CISOs, to go to, and again, fully independent and literally communicate with each other and collaborate with each other. Talk about their successes, talk about their fails. We typically focus and build on this trust model of being able to communicate and help each other. So this is all free. This is all free services that are available. You're not required to buy anything. So this is my first introduction. Today I'm going to be talking about a little bit around, again, the type of threat actors we see as well. So who is actually after your data? And many of you will be familiar with the online anarchist or the hacktivist, as we've called them. And over the years, they've tried to cause damage to our organizations. They've typically tried to DDoS us. Some cases they've tried to deface our websites, and obviously in some cases they've been successful in doing that. But again, as I mentioned at the beginning, nowadays we see even the online anarchists looking to steal data. Okay, if you can gain access to an executive's inbox and steal some emails that contain some content and publish that online, that is pretty damaging to an organization. We saw that within the Sony breach. Okay, we saw what happened with Sony when, again, executives in that organization, their email was compromised and lots of information was leaked and put on display for public means. So again, from an organization's perspective, this is probably something that most CEOs get very scared about, this type of threat actor. We then have the banker. This is somebody that over the last 15, 20 years has become very good at targeting on organizations and stealing lots and lots of structured data. Typically card data, typically financial data, logins to financial websites or online bank logins. They're very good at this. What's happened actually over the last few years is that the value of these items has dropped because now the market is flooded with stolen credit card information. And they can only steal certain quantities that haven't been stolen before. So the value literally drops. Now you can pick up credit card information in bulk for a very, very low fee. Now again, please don't go out and do this. We then have the contractor. Something was mentioned again at the beginning was that we now see crime as a service. become more popular than ever. And if you read any of the Europol and Interpol reports, they talk specifically around crime as a service. And what we're seeing is, again, is contractors that are very good at profiling organizations. They know exactly where to go and get information. What happens is there's a request put out there to say, I need data from this organization. A contractor will pick up that contract. They don't get paid up front. They go and collect the data. They go and sell it to the buyer of that data. And the transaction typically happens very, very fast. Last year, we saw a website called needapassword.com, okay, where people put in requests for a password, an online bank login, for instance. That was the very basic level, or a domain login for an organization. And somebody would go on, collect that data, and then sell it on that site, needapassword.com. That site no longer exists. It got taken down. But that wasn't on the underground markets. That was actually available to anybody, just doing a quick Google search. So the contractors actually in the growing area of cybercrime is something to be paid very, very close attention to. We then see the arms dealer, again, the people that actually supply and build the malware and the exploit kits. In some cases, this is the fastest growing area of cybercrime for profit. So these guys that typically create the malware, 10 years ago, they didn't make too much money. Nowadays, they can sell their exploit kits. They can sell their malware that has a proven track record of gaining access to any organization. They have SLAs. They have, again, people in the contact centers and support and help desk people that can help you with these tools. These guys actually don't get caught. They're not actually doing anything illegal in some countries. So what happens is that they build these tools. The more money they make, the more money and resources they can invest in building their technologies. Last year we saw the father of Zeus. Most of you are probably familiar with the Zeus exploit kit, the Zeus command and control infrastructure. We saw father of Zeus, which was a more premium exploit kit that was available. It could be purchased for $7,000. 3 guys invested a few $1,000s each. They bought this exploit kit. Father of Zeus. They made 100 times their investment. And again, please don't go out and do this. This is not a recommendation to do this. This is how popular and how attractive it is to anybody at the moment. So again, return on investment 100 times. Then again, most governments, most organizations today are probably most concerned about the special agent. And this is somebody that has, again, over 10 years experience of, again, writing their own tools, targeting organizations. They're very, very, very sophisticated. We hire people to come into our organization to analyze malware, and we look for anybody that has at least 10 years experience working for a common AV vendor. And this is typically what the special agent also looks to do. They look to hire people with that at least 10 years of experience in the organization. And these guys, again, get paid very well. They get paid to target, again, big organizations and steal things like intellectual property. And this is where typically you don't see disclosures online regarding intellectual property. No company really out there wants to really share or highlight that they have a data breach and that intellectual property was stolen from their organization, because their share price will literally drop through the floor. It doesn't exist. The company, after that type of incident, no longer exists if it becomes public. So again, just to highlight, those are the 5 key threat actors. From an external perspective, you have your own employees in your organizations, your execs. They're, of course, are another threat. And that, in some cases, the likelihood is slightly higher from somebody already inside your organization. But how do these guys also operate? Just a quick show of hands. Who's familiar with the kill chain, or the cyber kill chain, or the attack kill chain, or anything with a prefix and then kill chain? Okay, 1 or 2 people. So what I'm going to be doing is going to give a quick overview of how the kill chain works, and how perhaps you need to look at this from your organization's perspective, and look at how you can try and detect an attack on your organization. And this could actually be used by any of those 5 attackers. Okay, we're seeing trends where this is a common pattern that is seen when an organization is targeted. So it starts off with recon, stage 1. This is somebody targeting your organization, doing very, very good footprinting and profiling of your organization. I'll show you some tools that are very helpful to do this in a short while. They then target an organization. This one example we can talk about. We see thousands of these every day. This is one example, mapsoftheworld.com. Again, sits in the top 10,000 websites accessed on a daily basis. Again, so it's considered a trusted website for most organizations. This is what it looks like, very basic. If you wanted to see a map of the world, kind of explained in the URL, this is what it looks like. Very, very basic website. But again, it was compromised. The website was compromised for short periods of time, and then the actual compromise was removed. It evaded detection for many, many months. And everybody that visits this website when it was compromised is likely to have their machine, their device compromised as well. What the attackers did is they, again, a very basic technique. If you read the NISA report, the top three trends in attacks are malware, web-based attacks, and code injection. What these guys did is they injected the iframe in this website, pointed it to a dynamic DNS website where their content was hosted. Again, most organizations don't block dynamic DNS websites. They block, again, malicious content. At the time, this wasn't considered malicious by a basic web filter. This is what it looks like. It was an iframe. It's sourced. Again, very easy to do if you find a vulnerability on that website. It then launched the Fiesta exploit kit. This isn't a sophisticated exploit kit at all. This is very cheap to purchase. One of the less sophisticated exploit kits available, but again, it compromised lots of machines, thousands of machines. The dropper file was multi-stage. It wasn't just a binary that came down when you visited this website. It was multi-stage. It looked to bypass AV. It used basic open source framework tools such as Val to bypass AV. This is a framework you can go and download now off the internet. Build a remote access tool or buy one. You can bypass it through Val and it will bypass the top 35 AV engines. Again, all for free. It's used by many pen testers to bypass AV. So again, this is used in this type of attack. Once the machine was compromised, they used a very well-known Zeus command and control infrastructure to do this. Again, very difficult to detect. Zeus is very, very difficult to detect because of the URL regeneration it uses for command and control. And again, their financial goal was to steal personal information from these companies that were compromised, and again, steal financial data. And in some cases, we used, again, the contractors were involved in this. We saw, again, in some cases, again, the more sophisticated attackers using the same basic technique. So from your event perspective, you may see one or two of these events. What you really need to do is look at the 5 or 6 events and how they link together, which is part of the kill chain. That's just one example. I mentioned before, again, there is no recon as part of this, but recon today is pretty easy. You can go to showdown.com, you can find a device that is available, perhaps even from your network, that has a vulnerability. Again, I recommend perhaps something to do after this event is just go to Showdown, showdownhq.com, look for any devices that are inside your networks today that have a vulnerability, like a printer or something like that can be used to gain access to your network. To, again, in some cases, just do a quick query on the execs in your organization, type in their username and do a search on PQ. And it will give lots of information, perhaps where they've used their password elsewhere. Again, you don't even need to go and attack an organization and get to stage 5 or 6 if you can gain the credentials from that individual or that organization. So how do we, that's kind of the issue. Just trying to highlight quickly the issue that we have today and how the attacks are typically, again, multi-staged and how we need to understand those events, those incidents, and those campaigns. So how do we fix this? Well, typically, most organizations, I conduct lots of security assessments. I go into an organization and I see far too many companies on stage 1 where they're trying to protect their infrastructure. They're just trying to protect their network from the outside. They're running things like firewall, next-gen firewall, UTMs, which again can be bypassed pretty easily. Again, 15 years ago, UTMs, when we start talking about UTMs, I thought they were the greatest thing, and then literally a year later, I said they're not so good. The same thing for sandboxing 5 years ago. I thought sandboxing was the greatest thing, and then a year later, it wasn't, because it was easily bypassed. Some organizations are kind of here, they're focusing on compliance, and they're using things like SIM for event correlation, still passive detection, very basic, such as antivirus and looking at device encryption to protect their data. The more advanced organizations are on stage 3, where they've started to introduce things like breach detection systems, the sandboxing, as I mentioned before. They're having the availability of malware forensics teams in their organization or external that they can go to if they have an incident. Some of them are doing collecting threat intelligence and looking to, again, apply that to their countermeasures. And some are even, again, this is a really important message, are doing threat modeling, where they've been able to identify the assets they need to protect and also identify the attackers and try and look at their countermeasures from a model perspective. Again, this is a really powerful thing to do. This is so much better than a risk assessment using a spreadsheet. Threat modeling is a really powerful tool. The most advanced organizations that I'm going to speak to have moved to this risk-based data-centric strategy. And this includes things like full DLP, so data leakage prevention, running data discovery, looking for changes on data, looking at data movement in their organization. They're now doing things like automated data encryption. They're using things like machine learning to identify, again, rogue data or anomalies based on that type of movement of data. They're looking at data at rest, data in motion, data in use constantly. This is kind of where financial services organizations are really focusing. This is their next 5-year strategy, pretty much. They're trying to get to the stage where they can modify or at least educate based on behavior, and they can get to that kind of the nirvana, which is predictive analytics, predicting the event before it happens. The great thing with stage 4 is you can start talking to the execs around business risk, which for me is one of the most powerful messages and means to communicate, is talk about business risk. Risk is pretty easy to explain. Risk is likelihood and impact. Stage 1, 2, and 3 typically try and identify likelihood. Stage 4 helps you identify likelihood and impact, the potential impact to your organization of a data breach. If you read the recent, again, CEO reports that all get published every year, data breach is now a top 5 concern for a CEO. That's what a CEO is going to be asking you perhaps in your next meeting. If you're involved already in the boardroom discussion, they're going to be asking, how are we protecting ourselves against the data breach? How are we going to reduce the impact of a data breach? Stage 4 is the means to do that. I talk about, again, a very basic blueprints of security. So one of the key, most important items, I think today and probably the next few weeks or any conference you go to this year, they're going to be talking a lot around the countermeasures, the vulnerabilities that exist, the risk, threats, and threat agents. I've already covered some of those things today. But how security works and information security works, even cyber security works, is we need to understand and identify the assets we need to protect, and also get our owners involved, our risk owners. Any organization that is ISO 27001 compliant today has risk owners defined. They have these risk owners already profiled or listed within their ISO documents. They already have an ISMS that includes, again, an information security committee, which includes owners and risk owners. And they need to be educated, they need to be told, or at least also tell you, what is it in the organization they need to protect? Again, this is a very basic blueprint, but it's really powerful in a meeting to discuss security. It's not as cool as the 5 threat actors. It's not as cool to explain, but again, this is a kind of a fundamental principle of information security that I like to use. This is my day job when I'm not presenting. I much prefer presenting. This is pretty comprehensive. This is a pretty busy day if I'm trying to cover everything in security. And again, if anybody would like this, I can share this with you. Again, if anybody would like to be a CISO, start looking at some of these areas, start getting very good at these areas, looking at, again, how you can perhaps even adjust your role to be similar to this. In the bottom right-hand corner, I'll zoom in because it's easier to see. This is, again, going back to that stage 4. Again, that risk-based data-centric strategy. The risk management side of security comes in, and that data-centric strategy. So this is how you own your data before your adversary. You run data discovery. You look at data classification from a means of better labeling data. It's not a control, but it's a better way to label your data. You look at access control, and again, how you prevent people accessing data they shouldn't access. DLP, DTP, this is the fastest growing technology today. Again, something that I've been involved in the last 5 years. It isn't getting old, isn't getting boring. People are seeing huge, huge wins by using DLP and DTP as a technical control. Looking at monitoring your partner access, who has access to your data, where your company is sending data. Again, that goes back to the privacy. If you're controlling or processing data, you have a commitment, and it means to justify every single time that data is collected or sent to another organization. You have the requirement to justify that purpose or give consent. Then going through and automating a lot of these things, encryption, masking, anonymization, and then building that back into your security operations, your SecOps requirements of monitoring and alerting. So that's how you own your data before your adversary, by going through those simple steps. This is what it looks like in a tool, and again, I'm slightly biased because this is the tool I use. We get a pretty good discount on WebSense technology at WebSense, as you can imagine. But this is how we've had to adjust the tool to make it more data-centric. Looking at data risk indicators, looking at monitoring suspicious activity behavior that looks different to normal behavior. Again, it's a really powerful way of looking at this. We have a stand outside where you can learn a lot more about WebSense. It's not all around the technology, of course. A lot of security strategies fail because there's no process, there's no enforcement of process. One of the biggest issues is there's a lack of metrics. There's a lack of measurement as part of these things. And that's a really, really, really powerful and important message to take away. If you don't have the metrics, you can't train people. You can't tell them what's good and bad. If you don't have the people trained, they won't follow the process. If your process isn't followed, then technology is not really going to help you. It's just going to identify lots and lots of issues every single day. So again, it has to be a cycle of these things. To wrap up quickly, the risk-based data-centric model and owning your data before your adversary has to be, you have to make your strategy asset-centric. You have to understand the assets you're trying to protect, who owns them, and put it into the business context. You have to be relevant. You have to understand the attackers that are typically targeting your organization and the tactics, techniques, and procedures they're going to operate against. Look at the threats, look at the vectors, look at the kill chain as one example. Get better at pre-incident. That's always a great thing to do. My CEO of WebSense, again, he wants to know before an event happens. He doesn't want to know an attack has happened and it's potentially been successful, and I've told him about it afterwards. That's not good for your career. If you tell your CEO that there's been an incident, you could do nothing to stop it. You have to get really good at pre-incident. I'm not saying this is possible 100% of the times, but it's where focus should be made. Better understanding of the patterns of the triage and the actions taken. And the fundamentals, the supporting pillars of all these things, because even if you have a team of 50 people, you may struggle to do all of these things. But using things like machine learning, the collective threat intelligence that exists today, even open source intelligence is pretty powerful, and using, in some cases, elements of predictive analytics to do that. Security strategy is a foundation for any security program. Good people with the relevant skills, the technical controls. Again, prevention is better than detection and response. So this is how you should typically structure a security strategy. Again, the great thing is you can then work down as well. Once you detect and respond, you can perhaps look at your prevention measures. You can then think, do I have the right technical controls? Again, this helps with basic threat modeling exercises where you can do this. And again, great thing, if anybody asks you what your security strategy is, at least have a reply. Have something ready to respond to that question. If your response is, well, we're just trying to secure things, or we're trying to secure everything, it's not always a good response to say that. Again, my response is, well, we operate in a risk-based, data-centric strategy. So to wrap up quickly, takeaway points for today. If you're interested in the last 20 minutes of that talk, map threats to assets, really, really important message. And again, model likelihood and impact because that's risk. Threat model. It's a really, really simple exercise. We offer free workshops where we can help you with that threat model process, give you some tools to help you do that. And again, don't just cover the external threat, look at the internal threat in your organization. DLP is hot. Look at DLP as a technology. There's lots of people out there offering DLP that can help you stop data leaving your organization, even from a very simple mistake made by an employee. That has, in some cases, huge impact to the organization. Look at machine learning as well. Machine learning has been around for many, many years. And again, it's a really powerful way of looking at the technology and how the technology can help you, how technology can adjust. File fingerprinting is another example where you don't need to classify all of your data. If you classify all of your data, please tell me, because you're probably the first organization that I've spoken to that's been able to do that. And again, I've probably re-emphasized this point too much today. I apologize. But it's a really good strategy to move towards that risk-based data-centric. And it is a winning strategy as well. And it will help you, again, in most cases, win more often than you lose. Thank you very much for your attention today. I really appreciate that. If we have time for questions, I'm more than open to questions. Yes. If you'd like to email me, you can email me also.
Good. Thank you, Neil. Applause, please. Now it's time for your questions. I'm sure this is a very good opportunity to ask a question to a very smart guy, actually, who probably spent many years in this field. Okay, who wants to go first? Come on, guys. You had your coffee in the morning?
I could feel my phone vibrating as the emails come in, so okay. I think email is the preferred mechanism.
Anyway, I have even two.
Okay.
Now, you spoke about arms dealer, and I remember first time I encountered this was more than 10 years ago, when we took a glimpse at the software that was planted on our server before it was extracted. It was, first it held comments in many languages. I mean, at that time, I understood the scale at which this is created. And the second thing, it was simple and sophisticated. It could even show the temperature of the server. I mean, what are these capable today, and how quickly they are usually extracted, implanted? So, can you tell us about the process and what these are capable today?
So, as I said, the arms dealer's probably been around for 10 years. The most sophisticated, again, tools that we see have been around. And you look at the code, and if you look at some of the, again, if you hash some of the code, it is old code. It's just been reused and it's been built over time, much like any software that exists today. Again, in some cases it's old. It's been built on. It's been modified and updated. The thing is, every time somebody tries to counter that type of code, it gets updated. We talk about morphic malware today. I remember looking at polymorphic and metamorphic malware 10 years ago. It's still apparent today. We still bypass AV. So again, it's something that we actually need to look as a countermeasure, but we're never going to be 100% against any malware, I can guarantee you. With the best countermeasures that exist today, we're never going to be 100% around stopping exploit kits and stopping the arms dealers being successful. We can make it more difficult for them, but we're never going to be able to stop them.
Okay. And the second one is, you mentioned data encryption, and we know that many of the data encryption methods are actually compromised on purpose to make them weaker, to make some backdoors, etc., even for the government. Now, what are your recommendations in the encryption field?
So, yeah, I mean, look at what encryption you're using. Again, I can't comment. I don't know. I don't have full insight into what's compromised and what isn't, apart from what's public. But I would look at the encryption mechanisms that are used today. I would also say as well that criminals use encryption to get data outside your organization. So look at, again, custom encryption types. Look at encryption that, again, an anomaly of data leaving your organization using an encryption type that you have not either recommended or put in place. And we do that as part of a 1 week proof of concept. And we guarantee we see encryption leaving, or see encrypted data leaving the organization that nobody's aware of. Nobody has agreed to that type of process from happening. So the business context lies into that. You have to look at, again, what is public as well. As I said, I would always choose, again, strong encryption algorithms to use. I would always look at, again, the techniques that are used to encrypt that data. Otherwise, everything else is suspicious.
Okay. Now, yes, question here.
I noticed several times you were talking about AV bypass, but come on, scan engines are really ancient technology.
Yep.
The whole idea about any kind of endpoint protection is prevent the malicious file landing from the disk. if it's scanning already, several things have failed.
Yeah, I agree. The reason why I talk about it, and the reason why I think people still talk about AV, is because a lot of organizations just still rely on it. And I agree. I mean, if you look at most of the AV technologies out there, they have multi-stage, they have the ability to monitor behavior, they have the ability to sandbox. They don't just rely on signatures. But again, most of the organizations I go in and I speak to them, they said, yeah, we don't have that functionality turned on. We still rely on the signature. So this is why I talk about it.
Yeah, I do agree on that. I work for F-Secure, so caveat.
Okay.
And about probably 90% of the cases where we investigate why our protection has failed at particular company, it is exactly because they have been turning off the default settings. That is a really, really good way of shooting yourself in the foot. Don't turn anything off. And if you have issue, either talk to the vendor and get the problem fixed or switch vendor. Don't go turning any of the protection features off. It's about the same thing as you put the product in a sack and hit it head with a brick.
I agree. Vendors are kind of here as well. We're not just, again, I'm a security officer. I'm not here to sell a product in particular. If you have a question, please, again, go to the vendor. Look at requirements. I'd love to see more organizations sending me requirements that are mature, that are to the level where I can actually say and start responding and say, this is what I recommend you do. I sometimes see requirements coming in, and they're very basic. They're copy and a paste from something that Gartner or Forrester or whoever's kind of stated you should do, or basic guidelines. We need to kind of move to a more mature state. But that's a great point. Look at recommending settings, and again, look at where your data sits as well. If anybody in your organization has really privileged access, ensure, again, their machine, you have slightly more, again, advanced settings and the ability to detect anomalies based on their access. That's a really, really good, important message.
Okay.